Hello, and welcome to Interesting Choices, the podcast where we watch obscure movies, video games, TV shows, and other media, and especially ones that make interesting choices. I'm Sky.
I'm Kate. Hello, Sky.
Hello, Kate. And this week we watched Zardoz. Or experienced Zardoz.
We did the Dawes.
Yeah.
Wow.
We got dawsed.
Yes. I hadn't seen this movie in a very long time, and it is definitely full of things. It's in that era of like late 70s, early 80s psychedelic sci-fi, where people just thought like a bunch of weird stock footage of like lava lamps and microscope slide creatures make for trippy visuals.
I mean, it hits all the sort of new agey high points: crystals, psychic powers, third eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess before we launch fully into it, if you haven't watched Zardoz yet, content warning: there is some sexual assault, a lot of violence, a lot of nudity, and the way that they treat women's bodies in this, not great.
Nope. Gosh. And, I mean, this is normally the point where we start going into the plot, but, I mean, it's one of those movies where it's just sort of a sequence of events.
It is. I mean, it does have an overarching plot and characters that develop, but like the fact that it's opened up by a narrator who's a talking flying head who tells you about himself and the movie, and then breaks the fourth wall, tells you a lot about the experience that you're about to get into.
You get a soliloquy from a floating head with a drawn-on mustache and some kind of head covering type deal.
They look like peasant head coverings, like halfway between what a peasant and a pharaoh would wear.
Or if you've ever seen an Orthodox Jewish woman out in public, also that.
Yeah. In general, everyone, regardless of gender, dresses like a middle-aged Spanish teacher who joined the polyphonic spree.
Yeah.
Like a lot of primary colors and
bright colors. Everyone's got these weird, I didn't notice it until midway through the movie, but then I realized they were always there. These weird foam cod pieces that just sort of hang down over their loose knee-length pants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of the clothes are like knitted tops with like little cap sleeves, like you would get on most like women's wear, but everyone wears them and they kind of tie in the middle. It's a very interesting presentation when it comes to gender and question mark.
Yeah. We're not given a lot of information on the world when we get in. It just sort of goes straight into a bunch of guys wearing what can only be described as red banana hammocks and cross your heart suspenders.
Yeah, basically like diapers and bandoliers is the fashion choice for these brutals.
People call them that. They call themselves exterminators because they kill other brutals.
And they're wearing these sweet paper mache, like Janus, like double face masks.
Yeah,
they're pretty dope, and they all look like the eponymous floating head of Zardoz.
Yes, Zardoz is a floating stone head with a booming voice. Mm-hmm. Just sort of comes down and says his words of wisdom. Such as they are.
That speech is a choice. Yeah, it's the gun is good, the penis is bad, the penis shoots seeds. some overpopulation, something.
The gun brings death, and then it just barfs out like every surplus firearm in Britain.
Yeah, a lot of shotguns, shells, a lot. A fair number of like rifles and stuff. Just barf multiple times, just barfing out of his giant stone head.
Loose ammo, Sten guns.
Yeah. This was filmed in Ireland, so they probably had plenty for, I don't know, revolutions, whatever. All of these exterminators ride around on horses, for the most part. Some are like walking around, but like they're mounted.
Yeah, I got real War Boys vibes from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are the War Boy prototypes, right? Like they believe in this like fatalistic death religion that's all about murder, and that's pretty much all you get.
Pretty much, yeah. We see one of them turn to the camera, and it's Sean Connery with the handlebariest of handlebar mustaches.
And a very long braid.
Yes.
Like, he's clearly going bald on top, but his hair is just this super long braid down to, like, the middle of his back.
Yep. It's a mullet if the party was dying down up front.
Yes. Yeah, but it just keeps going into the night in the back forever. He takes this pistol, very slowly aims it at the camera, James Bond style, and then shoots into the title card, I guess.
Yeah.
So the next cut that you get is like from the inside of Zardoz. You see like a pile of grain, and it starts moving, and like the grain is among all of these other sort of bits of produce in baskets, and then there are some shrink-wrapped humans, naked people, just standing up against the wall. That's never really explained.
No, and it shows up a lot for how much it's not explained.
Yeah. I think they were just like, it's the future. We want to make it weird, so we want to shrink wrap some people. But it's never explained who those people are, whether they are of the exterminator class or of the brutal class or spare clones, or who even knows.
Something that even the people who we're getting to have forgotten with the passage of time.
But the grain starts moving, and then you see Sean Connery's... Well, you see a hand come up with a gun, and the rest of it follows, and it's Sean Connery, and he pops out of this pile of grain, and he looks around the inside of this floating head, which is now in the air. You can see, like, the sky out of the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And he just creeps around for a while, for, like, a very long time, just, like, looking at things, like, using his gun as, like, a stick to poke things with. It's a really interesting choice that he's made this entire film, where the gun is such an extension of his body that he just uses it like his finger most of the time.
Well, the gun is good.
But then, yeah, he gets scared by the shrink wrap people, but then is like, well, they're not dangerous, so I guess I'm just gonna look around some more. And then like our narrator shows up.
Yeah, and he just gets shot immediately.
Yeah. He basically pops up in the mouth of Zardoz and is like, hey, and then Sean Connery just immediately shoots him, and he's like, no, why? I could have told you things. Oh, and then he like slowly flies out of the mouth and falls to his death.
Slow fall to where he lands and shows up later in the movie. Spoiler.
Mm-hmm.
But
and then, yeah, after that, the giant stone head just lands at a nice lakeside cottage.
Yeah, it's the nice country estate.
Yeah. It's not like a big manor either. It's like maybe 4 rooms.
Yeah, but it's very British estate.
Yeah, it's it's of the Isles, and it's very quaint. It feels cozy. But the giant stone head lands, and then you see it's not the traditional historic estate, because there are giant plastic spheres, which basically look like a giant pair of balls. And there's a lot of scenes of just like Sean Connery just poking around these giant balls. But yeah, he's like, guess I'm here. Guess I should explore. He doesn't say much because that's his character. But then the next, 15 minutes are just him silently exploring this complex.
Yeah. He wanders into, I think, what later turns out to be a grain mill. It just looks like there's empty pillowcases hanging from the ceiling with cocaine coming out of them. But it's flour.
Yeah. And then he's scared by the mill wheel, of course.
Yeah.
He's scared by a lot of things in this. But thankfully, he has restraint enough to not shoot anything yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, then he goes into the balls, and inside the balls it's a greenhouse, and there are trees in plastic bag things that he pokes and they moan. They're real weird trees. And then he finds a secret passage leading into the upper story of the house.
Yeah, I'm gonna confess, I was also setting up a computer, so I missed some chunks of this.
Yeah.
I remember him finding the Ringopedia.
Yeah, he basically just goes in, and it's it's a very quaint little, if you got it in an Airbnb, you'd be like, this is nice, but not that big. But it's a little quaint upper story room, and it's clearly the main character, or not the main character, the narrator.
The narrator, yeah.
His room. And, Sean Connery pokes around, and he sees a picture of Zardoz and is scared by that, and plays with a jack-in-the-box and is scared by that. And then something starts talking, and he looks through a little jewelry box and finds this ring that it projects all of these images, which is kind of a neat effect for the 70s, honestly.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see, especially when he starts whipping it around the room and putting it on different walls in his hand and stuff.
Yeah, and so he has this device that can tell him about things, and so he just goes around pointing it at flowers and stuff. He's like, "What's this?"
Yeah, everything else spooks him, but he's immediately okay with the voice coming out of the piece of jewelry.
Yeah, absolutely no problem with that. He grabs that thing, he just starts going around the complex, and then eventually he stumbles upon this grove, and there's just these really bored people in a tree above him. And he's busy looking at flowers and stuff with his ring, and they're like, "Hey."
Yo, dude.
And then I kind of blanked out on the next bit, but somehow he gets captured.
Gosh, I'm having a really hard time remembering. I think one of the other principal characters shows up, May, who I just called Freckles.
Yeah, she's this lady with freckles, and she always wears a headscarf that's orange, so she was pretty easy to recognize. She
sort of gets him into, some kind of mesmerization stare deal, and then starts probing his mind, because, we don't find out until later, but this is the future, and technology has progressed to the point where people just have psychic powers.
Yeah, and they can just use them. They use them to subdue Zed, and then May kind of parades him around to all of the other future people who you learn are called Eternals because they're immortal. They can be, their bodies, if they're destroyed, regenerate, and so they're pretty much locked into this eternal life that they have inside this little bubble. And the bubble that they're in is called the vortex, which is this little manor house and the grounds and the lake, and it's all surrounded by an energy shield that only Zardoz can pass through.
They go both the cheapest and one of the, I don't know, I don't want to say better. They do a good job when they use plexiglass to represent the field. It was really hard to tell it was there, but when they weren't using it, it was very much Sean Connery shaking his fist at nothing.
Yeah, his miming not the best, honestly. Yeah, so they put him on trial. At some point, there's like a bunch of weird explanations about how people don't sleep too. That's somewhere in the movie. Again, as you say, it's kind of a jumble because like things just happen, and a lot of this,
there's no real order to the information that gets put out. It just sort of comes up randomly.
Well, I think a good half of the runtime is just Zed explores the compound, and all of those things are pretty much fungible. They can happen in any order. There's no rhyme or reason to, like, oh, we needed this piece of information to understand this other piece of information. It's just like, guess there's an energy field. Guess there's a fountain, I guess.
Yeah, they throw him on a slab in another room full of shrink wrap people in the walls while they probe his mind and put all the thoughts up on the TV, and we get some stuff that some people may not want to watch. That's the first and one of the more graphic depictions of sexual assault. And he's just sort of haphazardly says it. It's just sort of laying out that he lives a brutal life because he's a brutal. And as we get to more of the Eternals lifestyle, I kind of got the feeling that someone was shooting for that's like modern Britain, their modern Britain, and Sean Connery's character represents a return to older times, like how he's the superior specimen, and
yeah, it definitely has a very sort of like anti-intellectual, sort of not exactly an anti-progressive stance, because like this is probably a reaction to the 60s, right? Like the flower power, all that.
More leisure activities are available, more free time is available, people become bored with life. Life has become easy. Healthcare is easy. People don't know what to do with their time. It almost works, but every time it feels like it's about to gel, they try to jam another metaphor in, and it just sort of hits perpendicularly and gets muddled up, and then we go on another tangent metaphorically.
It is
a metaphorical tangent.
Definitely a messy sort of thesis that they're putting together. The Eternals have been hoarding art and culture in order to preserve it, because they are the guardians of the human intellectual pursuits, and they've had infinite time to develop the sciences and all of these other things, but man, does it suck to be immortal. Except some of them seem to be totally jazzed by it, and the others seem to totally hate it.
Yeah. Some people abjectly hate it. Some people are just real bored. Some people are fine. Some people hate it so much that they become what they call apathetics. They just kind of stand around staring at walls until later.
Yeah. They're almost catatonic, which there's a second horrible sequence where one of the Eternals is showing Sean Connery around. Basically, they treat him like a slave the entire time. And he shows him the apathetics, and Sean Connery just like puts his hand up a girl's shirt who is functionally catatonic. And then the guy's like, do you want her? Just take her. She doesn't care. And then Sean Connery...
that was rough.
Yeah, it's bad. There's a lot of that sort of thing in this movie. And then they try to like... they try to redeem some of that in a weird way.
Yeah, well, the guy he's with is called Friend, which I didn't realize was his name at first. They kept saying it, and suddenly it clicked. I'm like, oh, that's his name.
Yeah.
But he's kind of a huge dick.
He is. He is one of the people that's stricken by ennui to the point where he just doesn't give a fuck about anything. So he's pretty much just like chaotic neutral all the time.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Sean Connery throws a temper tantrum. He just picks up a barrel and then smashes it and then knocks over the cart they were using to pull their bread deliveries around. And this seems to awaken something in the woman that he assaulted.
Yeah.
She kind of wakes up a little.
Yeah, and I get that the idea is that this society is nothing without violence, because that's part of the human condition. Like, death and pain and violence are necessary, is their thesis, because otherwise you'll just become apathetic towards everything. But it's in a really messed up way.
It really reaches, and it sort of clashes with some of the other themes going on. Like, they treat Sean Connery like a servant. They talk about people outside the walls if they're less than human. They have him sleep in a cage next to other animals in cages. So there's a real British colonial kind of vibe going on there. And then, with the whole apathetics thing, it's just sort of like this, she's awakened by his vigorous life energy or whatever.
Yeah, it's... Again, that kind of fits in with the colonial interpretation of minorities as, more animalistic and therefore more vigorous when it comes to both violence and sexuality. There is this undertone of animalistic virility, which is gross.
And then there's that scene later where he's with May and someone walks in on him, and then she literally calls it bestiality.
Yeah, that's also real gross. Because you see earlier in Arthur's room, Arthur is our narrator, there's a human evolution chart that goes from like early primates to greater apes to hominids to humankind, and then the last step is the Eternals. So they consider themselves an entire different species, even though we learn later that, you can totally just fuck, because they're just people with crystals in their heads.
Yeah, spoiler alert, they get Swarovskis embedded in their foreheads, and that's how everything works.
Yeah. At some point during the whole hypnosis thing, they put Zed on trial, and they're like, we should destroy this thing because it shouldn't be here. It's going to bring chaos and death, and it's going to ruin our way of life. And so they have the weirdest silent psychic votes, because people don't do the same thing. So you have no idea who's voting what. Some people nod, some people open their mouths, some people blink weirdly. I
think a couple of people had bizarre hand gestures or something.
Yeah, this movie is what happens when you let theater kids run wild. It's wonderful. But they psychically sentence him to 3 weeks. They allow May to study him for 3 weeks because she's like, this is a weird specimen. We've never seen anything like it. I need to do more research on it. And so they're like, all right, 3 weeks, and then we destroy him.
3 weeks, then it's into the furnace.
Yeah. And then that's why he's running around, doing chores, sleeping in a pen. He has a lot of unsupervised time for basically being a captive.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get that, because, what's he going to do? Steal a bunch of stuff and run away? Or kill someone? And then they just come back?
Well, I mean, they're still worried about him, wrecking things.
That's true. I don't know. There are a few scenes, especially when him and friend are doing bird runs, where someone's being sentenced to having bad thoughts it seems like one of the highest crimes in this society is, mental assault or a negative aura or throwing bad vibes at people.
Mm-hmm.
Which they also show again later as someone doing that to someone else. So you realize what it is, and it's gross, but when you first see it, it's kind of funny because there's just a guy, and he's putting his hands out like he's pantomiming casting a spell, and he's like, ugh, ugh, and then the person's like, ah, and it's just...
Yeah, there's a lot of psychic assault that doesn't show super well, like visually, because they don't do any effects for it. It's just wibbly wobbly fingers and people going, ugh. That's how they subdue Zed a couple times. When
everybody in the group goes woo 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 and they do the hands at him. They do jazz hands at him until he faints.
Yeah. Yeah, he kind of just roams around for a while and then learns different secrets. He pisses off Friend at one point, and so he turns Friend against him. And then during the next round table dinner that they have / trial, they revise their opinion of what to do with Zed. The main antagonist is this woman with like flowing like Farrah Fawcett hair, Consuela, which sure,
I don't know.
Sure. But she has the most like withering stares constantly for Sean Connery. Anytime he shows up, she's just like,
She is the whitest woman in this white movie.
Yeah. So there's a lot. I'm both disappointed that everyone in this future is white. But I'm also glad that there are no minority people for them to use in really fucked up ways.
Yeah.
Because they 100% would have had they had any in Ireland.
Yeah. We kind of skipped over it. When they're doing the bread run, Friend shows him to like the... I don't know what to call it. There's a big sign that says Starlight on top. Apparently, when you're punished, they add years onto your age. They age you artificially. They don't let you die, but they age you. And then the people who have been aged to the point where they can't really function anymore are put in what I just started calling the senior center, which is like old people prom forever.
Yeah. Those people are called renegades.
Yeah.
Which will become very prominent later on. Friend is kind of our surrogate for like showing Zed around this world, right? Explaining all the rules of the world, explaining all of the different intricacies. One of the reasons they're still keeping him around is because they want to find Arthur Frame's body in order to resurrect him or whatever.
They try to, they play back his death, but the computer won't let them see where his body landed because apparently that can't be shown without the consent of the individual, and because he died, he's already being resurrected in the tabernacle. So he spends most of this movie just being put back together off screen.
Oh, and we didn't really talk about it, but the tabernacle is the computer that controls their immortality.
The voice out of the ring, the holograms, the psychic powers. It's Wikipedia. It describes itself as God at one point.
Yeah. It's the main thing that they need to tear down, the system, as it were.
Yeah, the shining pyramid of the future. It's a glass pyramid in the middle of a lawn.
Yep.
Or a mirrored pyramid.
The audience learns that none of these people sleep. They've evolved past the need for sleep because they watch Sean Connery like, mortals needing to sleep.
Somebody could totally stab you with your eyes closed. Dreams are for losers.
So instead, all of these Eternals just go to second level meditation, which is kind of a mind meld thing where everyone joins their consciousnesses together in the tabernacle, and there's a lot of like finger wiggling involved.
I think everybody puts a sheet over their head and has their hands out, or is that something else?
Yes to both. Like, you see them do it without the sheets, but then you see them a lot of times just with a sheet over their head. And I'm not entirely sure if it's ever explained why they have sheets on their heads. There are a lot of scenes filmed underneath the sheets, weirdly enough. But yeah, at some point, Friend starts dissenting with the majority opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, Friend, you need to come to second level meditation with us. And he's like, I don't want to come to second level meditation. I don't want to go. No, don't make me go. In that voice, that's what he does for like 5 minutes straight of them wiggling their fingers at him and then him like whining. But then they use their psychic powers to like put him down, and then they're like, you are no longer one of us. You are a renegade. We sentence you to aging. Renegade. And they all say renegade like 100 times.
It's pretty surreal. I mean, this whole movie's surreal, but, you know.
Yeah. And Sean Connery's still in that diaper for like a good
95% of the run. I swear it's until like maybe just the final 20 minutes of the movie.
Randomly during this whole time, you see that Sean Connery makes it to the perimeter of this energy field, and he's communicating with his like fellow executioners using hand signals. And like clearly he wants to get them to come in. And there's a plan in place.
Or at least the implication of a plan.
After Friend gets sentenced, Sean Connery's like, oh no, I need to go talk to Friend because he has information that I need. But he's in the old folks' home.
Yeah, he's gone to old people prom.
Yeah.
And not the worst old age prosthetics I've seen, but it's kind of marred by the fact that they only did half of his face.
That was also a choice. Yeah. It was like, nobody else is half-aged.
Well, I think they used old people for all the rest of the old people.
Well, sure, but like, this was a specific choice to make him half-aged as some sort of weird half-punishment. But he still does the like, I'm old voice the entire time.
You did this to me.
But then Sean Connery's like, yo, y'all want to die? I can make you die. I'm good at making people die, so help me make you die.
Friend's kind of like, check it out, fellow old weirdos. This guy's mortal. He can bring death. He can die. He does it all. Let's beat him up.
And then Sean Connery both gets beaten by and beats up a bunch of senior citizens. Like,
swinging a crutch.
Yeah, like, these actors are legit old. He's just been brutalizing old people for like 10 minutes straight. But then at some point, he is introduced to the creator of the tabernacle, who is in this old people's home. He's too old. And
he dissented.
Yeah, he dissented, so they sentenced him to being too old to even walk around. So he's like lying in a bed. But he doesn't know where the tabernacle is because they erased it from his memory.
But he does remember. He says to go talk to May.
He does go talk to May.
This is probably one of the bigger info dumps in the movie. She tries to get all the answers from him before when they have him on the memory view table in the shrink rack people prison. But he manages to, for some reason, shut them out. There's some talk of him being like a superior specimen. He's better than all of them because he's a mutant. It don't really go into it a whole lot.
Yeah.
But
other than to say he's the Kwisatz Haderach of the Zardoz universe.
The Kwisatz banana hammock.
Yes. There's just a lot of explanation here while he's I don't like all of the sequences with him and May are like mushed up in my head, but basically,
Yeah.
she's like, "You're a superior species. I want to bear your children. Let's bone down so I can have your seed, and we can bring forth a new generation who will refine and purify what we've done here in the vortex."
The raddest, the baddest, the daddest.
Yeah, basically, she is a reformer, while a lot of other people are just straight up abolitionists who just like
They just straight up kill me.
yeah,
I want to die. But yeah, she probes into his brain, and we get an explanation. The Zardoz had them controlling the population of the Brutals, which I guess are just, the peasants outside of the dome, essentially. And they were hunters, and he liked that. And then one day, Zardoz made them round up the Brutals and have them grow wheat instead of just killing them. They would ride around and just murder people, and then one day that was over. And he was upset about that. So he climbed into the head and shot God.
yeah, that wasn't good enough, and so she wanted more. And then she basically broke his mental barriers while they were under the sheet, I guess.
Yeah.
And she learned that he was special. He was special among all of the executioners because at one point he was killing and got tricked by a man in a mask to come inside a library.
He was tricked into the library.
He was.
That was actually something I thought was kind of neat, because right before that he says the phrase, "I lost my innocence," and then he gains knowledge. Which, it's kind of sort of a neat allusion to Adam and Eve in the apple, but it's just him and it's books, so they don't really do anything more than that sentence, and there's books.
Yeah, floating books.
Floating books. A floating children's book. Is very British.
Yeah, which he then immediately uses to learn how to read, and then spends like time in the library quickly learning everything there is to know.
Yeah, he says he read everything.
Yeah.
And then he finds out the meaning of Zardoz. He finds out where it came from, and that's apparently, like, he was mad before, but that's the straw that broke the camel's back. And what it is the Wizard of Oz, but without the W-I and the of.
Yeah, the Zardoz.
Yeah.
And so there is the implication in that scene that it is the trickster hand of Arthur Frame leading him on into this space, and that recontextualizes the first scene where he gets shot by Sean Connery, and he's like, "God damn it, I just led you here. You could have just waited for me to explain shit for like 5 minutes before you shot me."
Sometimes the gun isn't good. Sometimes.
Then the revelation happens, and then he's like, She asks him straight up, "Why have you come here?" And there's this, he's like, "I came here for the truth." And she's like, "Why have you come here?" And then this back and forth happens, and he's like, Revenge. Which also doesn't...
For making me farm.
Yeah.
Which is especially weird because he wasn't the one farming.
No, but I think he resented having to be an overseer. Basically, they made him into cops. And he's like, "I don't like that."
Okay.
There's this very tender moment where after all of his walls are broken down, May just starts like kissing him on the like forehead, and you can see like things are starting to go. And then Consuela pops up and is like, "Bestiality, bestiality."
Yep. Well, they start out. May's under the meditation shroud, gossamer thing. Sean Connery gets under there. They have a chat. Then we go into memory flashback mode. And when we come out of that, they're lying down and May has her shirt off.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Okay. That's what you do for meditation.
Sure, of course.
But
yeah.
That kind of kicks off this whole like Keystone Cops chase sequence that is the remainder of the movie.
Yeah. Everyone in this compound is like, it's bright colors, weaved clothes. Some of the women have like knee-high white boots. It's very kind of flower children of the future. But they're riding around on horses with torches and sabers. Mm-hmm. It's just there's a lot of cognitive dissonance there.
Yeah. After the whole bestiality thing happens, Consuela uses her mind powers to blind Sean Connery.
He jumps at her, and it looks like another assault's about to happen, but then he's blinded, and he's feeling his way around a bunch of, like, thread, yarn room, getting tangled up and everything.
It felt like an improv exercise more than anything else, because they were narrating that he was blind and couldn't see anything, and he was just fumbling around, not going towards voices or anything, just fumbling in the dark.
Well, very much like in the clumsiest way to pretend you're blind, or just kind of staring at where your hands are going, and then with your hands out, and then walking into things anyways, even though you felt something there. Yeah,
it was insulting to any blind people out there. I'm sorry for that. That was so terrible.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
But almost immediately, he is rescued by the singer lady, who also, I guess, tends the garden, the greenhouse, because he's in there amidst all of these trees, and she's like, "Take this. It will heal your eyesight and let you see things that you've never seen before." And then his eyesight comes back, and then she's like, "You have a lot of strength, but it will run out. So if that ever happens, take this leaf and use it.
Eat it. You'll know when the time is right."
Yeah, you'll know when the time's right. And then he tucks it into his briefs. So he has this like gross crotch leaf the entire movie.
And then he does eat it later. Dear listener.
But the price that she extracts from him for her help is she wants him to kill her when he destroys the tabernacle, because she wants to die more than anybody else.
That's when people start running up on the plastic bubble they're in, I think.
Basically, like, the entire town of Eternals just starts flipping out, and they're like, "Get him! Smash him!" And they're inside this plastic greenhouse that is somehow indestructible, but they're bashing him through the plastic.
Well, people clearly put their hands through it a couple times, and then someone's like, it sort of collapses, and he's lying there covered in, shrink wrap. And he starts moving. It's like, "No, it's indestructible." And he just puts his hand through it and then tears out and then hauls ass out of there. It's just the weirdest little line.
Yeah, I think it's just to show that, like, his power exceeds 9,000 whatever. It's that type of moment.
Yeah.
But then he, like, runs off and he tries to... I don't remember if he hides with the apathetics next, or if he does some other stuff. Like, again, this whole movie's a jumble in my head.
I don't remember. I think if he does anything between that and when he gets to the apathetics part of the vortex, it doesn't matter. Because...
Yeah, like...
I think it's just mostly Three Stooging his way around while people on horseback with torches and... Paisley knit vests are chasing him. Yeah.
But he gets to the apathetic, and they live in a barn. And by live, I mean just stand. They stand in a barn. Yeah. So he ducks in there while he's being pursued by people on horseback, and you can see them kind of like in the background riding around in the courtyard of the barn stable area. But then the apathetics, who have been mostly just stationary and insensate the entire movie, all kind of like turn towards him, and the one woman that he assaulted earlier,
she's more awakened.
She is more awakened by the violence that he has brought to the vortex, and she comes up and she like touches his sweat.
She licks the sweat that she got off of his ear on her finger.
And there's a little chime, like a magic chime. and she like kind of like is, you know, invigorated by it. And she turns around and like gives a taste to the next person who then turns around and so they start passing around Sean Connery's like third hand sweat.
Well, she touches it to someone else's tongue, and then that person kisses someone else, and then that person kisses someone else, and suddenly everybody's making out.
Same-sex kissing, I mean, passing of energy, which, you know, transgressive for the time. But then they all just start, like, dogpiling on Sean Connery because they want his, like, virile man energy juice.
They keep closing in on him, and they're like, life flows out of you and into us.
Yeah.
Life.
And you can see he's kind of into it, but also at the same time, he's like getting weaker and weaker. And that's when he takes out his crotch leaf and just like does a little dab in his cheek or whatever he does.
He just sort of puts it in his mouth.
Yeah. And then he just books it. He's like, nope. Nope. This was fun, but nope.
Maybe later. Nope.
He goes to the Renegades and he's like, yo, hey, Renegades, help me out and I'll help you die. Like, for real this time.
You want to get dead?
And they're kind of like, they're enjoying the chaos. Like, some of them have, like, big carnival head masks on and they're, like, out of their retirement center. They're just roaming around the grounds. They're having, like, a jolly good time. And
I don't think we mentioned it, but like when I said senior prom and stuff, the senior old people's prom, they're all literally wearing like prom dresses and tuxedos. Like they're old and ratty and stuff, but they're dressed up.
Yeah. And now they have somewhere to go.
Yeah.
So friend is like, I'll help you. You put on this dress. So friend and the senior citizens basically go on a parade with this bride, as Consuela and her people are like riding around being like, look for him everywhere. Look, he must be around here somewhere. Let's be violent. Let's set things on fire. There's like starting to like smash statues and stuff.
They're smashing statues. People are like doing it, which was like a big thing that they couldn't get erections anymore earlier in the movie.
Oh yeah, there was a whole slideshow about how they couldn't get boners.
Yeah, and then they tried to give Sean Connery a boner and it didn't work.
The apathetics were like, hey, he got us all horny and we couldn't find him, so we killed some guy and that got us horny, so we're just having sex now.
So people are just killing and banging and riding horses, throwing torches.
Yeah, they're
smashing antiquities.
It's hot girl summer in the vortex.
It's a ballroom bash.
As all this is happening, the renegades and this bride are kind of like walking through, and they hook him up with friend.
The old people are walking him around. One of them kind of looks like Dracula. Just as a non sequitur. It's like,
they all kind of look like Dracula.
We're giving away the bride, friend. And then they lift up the veil and it's Sean Connery. And it's like, very good. I shall take the bride. And then they go meet May. Mm-hmm. And she says she's got followers. She wants Sean Connery's character Zed to inseminate her and all of her followers. In exchange, they'll give him all of their knowledge. Mm-hmm. And then they say it'll take too long to tell you all this stuff, so we'll transmit it through touch.
Yeah, they will touch teach. Yeah. And that sequence was so long. It was just like, you know, psychedelic images and then like people reading facts about Marxism from an encyclopedia. Naked
women with classical paintings projected onto their bodies. Some woman was singing, so she had music projected onto her, people speaking different languages.
At some point, Zed gets some knowledge of many of these Eternals. So he becomes like the perfected man.
After that is when he finally gets actual clothes. It's the same thing everyone else is wearing. It's just like a red knit shirt and then knee-length baggy trouser type things. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, they couldn't find the tabernacle. That was one of the main points, was where is the tabernacle? Nobody knows where the tabernacle is because it's been erased from all these people's memories.
So a voice calls him into the really big room full of lots of wax figures in period clothing for some reason. Mm-hmm. And he wanders around, and, we got the moment where he's pointing his gun at everything. He points his gun at everything. It's just what he does.
Yeah.
And one of the statues just gives him a quick tap on the shoulder, and then he rips its face off, and it's Arthur. And Arthur floats around and says some cryptic things, and then gives him a crystal ball.
Yes. But before he gets the crystal ball, the singer from before appears in a vision after he got his brain meld thing on. After he came out of that, the singer is like, if you are going to find the tabernacle, take this crystal, this diamond, and when you can look inside of it, then you will know your answer. And so he just has this diamond, and then Arthur gives him the crystal ball, and he's like, what do you see in the crystal ball? And he's like, nothing.
That's then I can't help you.
Uh-huh.
Sean Connery's just it was like Friends painting atorium, where he just hung out most of the time, and he's puzzling over these two objects, and he starts asking questions of Tabernacle.
Yeah, and then kind of at the same time, Consuela and the troops are outside bashing down the door with some sort of battering ram that they found.
Like a part of a telephone pole or something.
Yeah. So there is a time pressure, but he's basically sitting at a desk holding a crystal ball in one hand and a fake diamond in the other, meditating and using his mind powers on
trying to figure out these two executive paperweights.
I don't remember what was the catalyst for it, but he figures out that it has something to do with light refraction.
Yeah, he sort of rattles off some pseudo-techno jargon about the brain emitting laser lights, and then they must use crystals to connect everybody. And Tabernacles keeps going. He'll ask questions of Tabernacle. Tabernacle won't tell him, so he says not permitted. And he keeps saying that over and over, not permitted, not permitted. Where are you located? Not permitted.
Yeah, but basically he kind of triangulates his answer by what Tabernacle won't tell him.
Yeah. And then he figures out he can see inside of the diamond using the crystal ball by putting one in front of the other somehow. Which enables him to figure out that the diamond he has is Tabernacle.
Yeah. Yeah, the all of the sum of the people's personalities and knowledge are infinitely trapped inside this crystal as light waves or something.
Yeah, it's something about infinite storage of light waves inside a crystal.
Yeah, and then he gets sucked into the crystal. And I'm unsure whether it's mentally or bodily, because it's kind of both somehow.
It's probably both. I don't know, because he comes out of it, and he's just reversing time.
Yeah. At some point, he learns some secrets, I think, about the Tabernacle, about how, these scientists created it.
Basically, the vortexes were... the world started going to shit. The vortexes were built by all the richest, brightest people to sequester themselves away with culture and art, and some of them figured out how to make themselves immortal by jamming diamonds under the skin of their foreheads. It's falling apart as I'm thinking of it.
Yeah.
This movie's just so...
The scientists that figured it out were too old to really, gel with immortality because they were all middle-aged. So the current crop of immortals that we see, the Eternals, are their children. And you get to see this...
Trust fund kids.
Yeah, you see this, really hilarious shot of all of them in, 70s-era clothing. Still kind of, out there, hyper-colored, but...
A couple people had, reasonable, sensible turtlenecks, but not many.
Yeah, it was wild. But yes, so you learn the history, and there's a lot of like scenes of the people inside the vortex watching all of the people outside die or like,
try to get into the vortex.
Because they basically built a wall to keep out all the pores.
Yep.
Where they could live happily and eternally. And then they casually mentioned that at one point they like went to space and couldn't find anything and then just came back.
Space was boring, so we came back. The whole purpose for all of the technology that they have apparently was for space travel, but it sucked, so they came home.
Yeah, like, they do a very good job of making you understand that all of these Eternals suck real bad.
Yeah, everyone's a gigantic dick.
Yeah, but yes, after he has this confrontation with the Tabernacle, he finds the flaw in the crystal and manages to escape somehow. It's still very unclear, but yes, then he has mind time reversing powers.
He comes out and he has yet a third crystal. It's a smaller orb, but I don't know if it's really unclear if he's like, at first I thought maybe he was controlling the other people through the crystals in their heads because everything's connected, but also the statues that they smashed become unsmashed.
Yeah, he's just like, follow me, but stay within my aura, and I'll get you out.
He puts his hand out. It does jazz hands at everyone.
Yeah, but then, like, time rewinds.
The footage rolls backwards.
And the footage rolls backwards, and then, like, they escape. And at some point, he has a, like, intimate moment with Consuela, who, like, stumbles upon him.
Yeah, he's contemplating the smaller orb, and she comes up behind him, and she's about to stab him in the neck with, like, a really big knife. And he's like, you want to do it, but you're not going to do it.
The hunt is always better than the kill. And she's like, I can't kill you because I love you.
I've become what I hate.
Yeah, I've become what I hate. You've made me into you, and because of that, I love you, and I can give you my love. So, like, if we make it out of this, I'll be your wife or something. And he's like,
I don't know.
Sure, deal. Got it. And he's like, I've never gotten anything. I've never gotten love, so I will accept yours. And so he's like into it too.
Yeah, and then she just goes out of the hallway and pulls the he's not here, guys.
Yeah.
Move.
Like, she was leading them. She could just be like, but instead she's like, you can continue to rampage. I'm just not going to do anything about it.
Let him blow off some steam.
And then
I think Sean Connery makes his way back to the senior prom.
He does, in order to deliver death to the main scientist guy.
Who proclaimed him death the first time he met him, and that has come to pass.
Yeah.
Because he dies.
Yeah, he dies, and everyone's stoked.
Yep. And we get a big old parade. Everyone's marching out, and Sean Connery's at the front of the pack.
Eventually they make their way to the fountain where the singer who helped him out was, and she's like, yo, you promised you'd kill me, so, like, here I am.
Put a bullet in me, dog.
Yeah, and then he lifts his gun up and he's like, I'm not the man I used to be, and, like, doesn't shoot her.
And then someone else shoots her.
Yeah, and then someone else shoots her, and you see, like, all of the fucking executioners just riding, just shooting people.
Right, after the sex education, he sent May out to the edge where there was an opening to let his friends in, is what happened.
Yeah, so...
I just remembered.
Yeah, like, May and her people are bouncing, sort of like the elves going to the west style. Like...
To have babies.
Yeah, they're all like horses and, like, have hoods on and stuff, and they, like, want to have super babies.
Sean Connery's just like, follow the wall to the east.
But inside, all of the executioners just are, like, rampaging, and all of the Eternals and the Renegades are like, kill me! I want to die! Kill me next! Kill me, please!
Yeah, we get a jaunty walk with Arthur and Friend. Friend said he was a friend of Arthur's before. This is the first time we've seen them together. I kind of thought they were played by the same person for a while. Friend's like, I did it. It was me. I bred you to be a mutant and then led you to the thing so you could kill everybody.
And then Sean Connery's like, but who gave you that idea? And then Arthur's like, oh, you got me, Sean Connery. You got me. We're all pawns in this game.
It sort of implied that Tabernacle put the idea in Arthur's head in the first place. And then Arthur and Friend are like, hey, let's kill each other, bro. And then someone else kills them.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, honestly.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, they die, and like pretty much everyone inside the vortex dies. But Zed runs off with Consuela.
Yeah.
And May and her people are gone. And then the executioners are standing around screaming, Zed, 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 for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And he's just like noped off to a cave somewhere.
And as far as I can tell, they just seal them inside and live the rest of their lives in a cave.
Yeah, there's this great montage where they're like sitting on these like not thrones, but like stone
Rock
chairs.
seats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see the passage of time and them never moving from these chairs, but just like holding each other's hands. And then like a baby happens
and then goes away, and then they become old, which is the worst old people prosthetics in the movie.
It's
they made Sean Connery look like a white Klingon.
Yeah, and somehow they got like they slumped down more and more to like show them getting smaller. But also they also had this like big, beautiful blonde child who will go and be the Superman, I guess.
I suppose.
Yeah, but then they turned into hilarious skeletons.
Yep.
With like really long, stupid hair. It's so good.
They turn into Halloween decorations, and then I guess those rot.
Yeah. They rot away, and then all that's left are the rusty handgun that he started the movie with, and then 2 palm prints, sort of like...
on the cave wall. Roll credits.
Zardoz is both a better movie than I remember it being, and far worse.
Yeah. Like, they really starts and stops a lot of interesting theses that keep colliding with each other and going off on other tangents. It's like a stream of consciousness script, sort of, I guess. That's
exactly the phrase I was just about to say. Like, if you view it with that in mind, that it is just a stream of images, ideas, conversations that you just take in as like some sort of weird tone poem and don't focus too much on like A to B continuity and other things like that, it still makes sense. The fact that we could describe the movie even though we got the order wrong, probably.
Yeah.
It has a coherent theme, even if it gets distracted a lot.
It gets distracted. It's still also somehow concentrated because everything takes place almost entirely inside the vortex. We never see much of the outside world except in flashbacks. We don't know what happens to the world at large. Sean Connery just says at one point, when the darkness began to fall, and there no idea if there was a war, if there was just some kind of social or economic collapse or whatever. Just things went to shit.
Yeah. Like, for a weird post-apocalyptic take on a dystopia, it's not bad. It kind of is in the vein of H.G. Wells' Time Machine if H.G. Wells had done way more drugs.
It's almost, I feel like it borrows a lot from A Brave New World. It feels like very much a dystopian utopia. And just doesn't know what to do with all the themes it's juggling.
I also definitely could have done with far less of the assault.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't super need, A, to show it as graphically as it does, and B, just to even include it in order to extend the themes that they already had, right? Like,
yeah.
But it's the 70s, and, this was the era where Clockwork Orange and things like that came out, so...
Yeah, and they don't lean on it a whole lot, but it's definitely got the trying to be racist without being racist kind of thing, where they're being racist, finger quotes, racist against Sean Connery's character. Like, he sees a clock and he freaks out, and, later you can hear a couple of the characters be like, oh, can't you believe he's never seen a clock before?
Yeah, it's fantasy racism.
Yeah.
Man, do colonial people love to explore racism, but it doesn't even explore racism in a very complicated way, other than like, oh, you thought he was worse than you, but he's actually better than you, which is
Yeah,
so
it's barely even like a shallow exploration. It's just kind of there.
yeah. It is a plot point and not a thematic exploration.
Yeah. I mean, there's also like the old people are shown as being violent and unruly, which sort of goes into, the old people living off of the work of the young, which is also simultaneously, the young people exploiting the efforts of the old people, the older generations. But that's never really explored. It's just kind of there. It's one of the themes that they just put in and then threw on the pile when they found the next shiny thing to shove in front of the camera.
There's a lot of things that are done for aesthetics as opposed to actually developing into themes that they definitely didn't do super well. Like, the fact that their entire economy is based on what stuff that Zardoz could bring them, from the people that have been farming and hunting and stuff out in the wild, because like that's the bread they eat, but everyone seems uninterested in what happens in the Outlands.
Yeah. I'm not really sure. They never go into that other than friend saying that Zardoz had them start farming because they couldn't support the apathetics anymore. So it's sort of implying that they do farming as well. They do their own stuff. They show them grinding the flour and making the bread, which is green, which doesn't have a bearing on anything. It's just weird future bread.
I'm into it. There are a lot of like open questions, and they thought some things out very well, but they definitely didn't think some things through at all, which seems to be a common thread running through a lot of the movies that we've discussed.
Yeah, it definitely leads to, a lot of topics of discussion. Gosh, I want to recommend it just for the spectacle, just so that you can say you have seen it. But, if you don't feel like it, you're not missing a whole lot.
If you are okay with fictionalized, heavy content around sexual assault and stuff, the rest of the movie is worth watching just because it's a really weird fucking movie. And I hear that the director's commentary is wild, so I'm probably going to watch it again with that. But apparently Sean Connery was in this movie because he was just bored and didn't do anything else. And the directors were like, holy shit, we got Sean Connery? And he's like, bleh. So it kind of comes through in this movie because he does a lot of weird acting. Like, he'll just run through a mirror maze screaming tabernacle at the top of his lungs.
I mean, especially in his later career, if you look into it, he passed up on a lot of roles that could have been big, but he didn't understand the script. Like, I don't know for sure, but I feel like this movie is something that influenced that decision making later in life.
I wonder if this is the film that like became his cautionary tale.
Yeah, this is the reason we didn't get Sean Connery as Gandalf.
There is a fork in history at Zardoz, and had he taken it, Sean Connery would have had the E. McClellan type career. Like,
if he just taken up boat racing instead of doing this movie or something.
Yeah, just macrame, whatever. Like, he was in like Dragonheart and stuff, so
yeah, I mean, he doesn't make bad decisions, but he was in The Avengers and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Excuse me, LXG.
Which isn't as terrible a movie as you'd think, but it did contribute to him never acting again, except for that. I think he did like a CGI kids movie that he just phoned in.
Yeah.
But
I'm fine with it, honestly. Like, seeing Harrison Ford phone in some of his later roles, I'm okay with just putting a bow on Sean Connery's career and just being okay with that.
Yeah, definitely. We'll never know what Sean Connery's Gandalf would have been like, but everybody needs to stop acting at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure he has a bed full of money that he can roll around in anytime he's sad about not doing acting.
God, I think he passed on Morpheus as well.
Huh. That would have been wild.
I think that one was almost Sean Connery's Morpheus and Will Smith as Neo, which would have been weird.
That would have been very weird. Anyway,
This has been Interesting Choices. Kate, where can people find you on the internet?
you can find me at Army of Meat on Twitter. You can also find me on other podcasts occasionally. My other primary film-based podcast is Weaving Spaghetti, so look for that. I'll put a link to it somewhere on Twitter, probably. Which we're talking about The Matrix, so that's why I'm just like, oh, we could have had Zardoz be Morpheus. Bless. And where can people find you, Sky?
You can find me at Shard_Corso, SHARD_CORSO on Twitter. You can also drop us suggestions for movies to do at interesting. So I changed it so it makes slightly more sense. Interesting Choices is too long for Twitter's @ to do, so it's Interesting Choiceix. INTRESTINGCHOI6.
Sure. Yep.
Which I'm sure won't go awry at all.
Whatever Sky just said, that is where you can find us on Twitter.
Well, until next episode, bye.
Bye.